Facing Death, a profound journey into the afterlife. Rosemary Thornton had a near-death experience, NDE, when she died for straight 10 minutes, and her experience was so unique and incredible that it completely changed her life. In that experience, she learned what happens after death, what angels look like, that there is life after death, and why we have nothing to fear when we die. Her near-death experience, NDE, provides more evidence for proof of an afterlife. Her life had been sweet, happily married the man of her dreams, but he somehow ended his life, and that devastated her. 29 months after his death, she was diagnosed with stage 2 cancer. After that, she used to pray to God 3 prayers. 1, either she defeats her disease or dies. 2, she would not like to relive her life as she was already having nightmares about death and all. 3, no hard decisions to make. After the death of her husband, she had been struggling with severe decision fatigue, exhausted from bearing the weight of numerous responsibilities. The aftermath of that tragic loss only added to the burden, engaging her in legal matters. Then, after 29 months, a devastating blow struck, a diagnosis of cancer. In her desperation, she begged God for swift healing or immediate release from suffering, to avoid suffering from a prolonged disease. However, her plea went in vain. After her surgery, medical errors occurred, and despite massive bleeding from a gynecological biopsy, she was sent home. Realizing she was bleeding to death after returning home, she found herself standing in the shower, anticipating her situation. Recalling a passage from 1 Corinthians 10:13, which said that God will show you a way out, she considered it as her way out, having asked to be healed or released. As she stood bleeding, feeling dizzy, and facing a critical decision, thoughts of God's mercy and the efforts others had made to save her crossed her mind. Deciding it might not be fair to those who had tried to help her, she stepped out of the shower and sought help from friends. They promptly called 911 and took her to a nearby emergency room. However, even at the emergency room, mistakes were made, and she was given morphine, which worsened her condition by depressing her heartbeat and blood pressure. A friend accompanying her noticed her blood pressure dropping to an alarmingly low 32/25, a point typically associated with death. However, her eyes unexpectedly opened. She explained it as terminal lucidity, where individuals nearing the end of life exhibit a burst of energy and clarity. Her friend told her that despite her awful condition, she attempted to sit up on the gurney, reaching towards and talking to an unseen presence as if seeking comfort. Moments later, she lay back down as her blood pressure dropped further. After receiving medical treatment, she went unconscious and woke up with a sensation of being forcefully ejected from her body, like a toast popping out of a toaster. With a plop, she got separated from her body. She had little awareness of her surroundings and the realization that she was undergoing a near-death experience, a subject she had keenly read about in books. Despite the odd nature of the situation, she remained composed, talking to herself, even finding humor in the thought of correcting grammatical tense in her final words. As she conversed with herself internally, she noted the continuity of her identity, from her familiar giggle to her horrible sense of humor. Despite lacking physical attributes like vocal cords or lungs, she found herself still capable of producing and hearing sounds, providing her with immense comfort in the endurance of her core beyond the confines of her physical form. She was simply loving this transition. At that moment, she realized that she had left behind all the negative emotions: guilt, self-recrimination, anxiety, sadness, pain, regret on the gurney. Freed from these burdens, she felt a sense of freedom from her former self, relieved by fears and worries that had plagued her as an overthinking writer. Instead, she embraced the feeling of separation from her anxieties, identifying herself as a distinct entity beyond those negative emotions. That awakening felt like waking from an intense dream after 59 years of life, which now seemed insignificant in the grand scheme. Dramatic events and personal conflicts lost their significance as she floated away from her previous existence. In the enveloping blackness, she felt the presence of spiritual beings comforting her, filling her with peace. This profound peace was pointing towards the biblical verse about the peace of God surpassing all understanding. Despite the inability to estimate the depth of this peace, she recalled her memories, particularly those of love and kindness shown to her throughout her life. While not a traditional life review, these memories only framed all the love she had experienced. She said she found comfort in the absence of a traditional life review, where she would have watched her life unfold before her. Instead, she carried with her the memories of love, kindness, and the people who had impacted her life. Despite feeling like a social outcast due to the tragedy she had endured, she remembered the unconditional support of friends like Pat, who reassured her that survival was the priority and that she should not be ashamed of all the actions she did for survival. As she drifted further away from her body, she felt the presence of spiritual beings who welcomed her with open arms, expressing joy at her return as if she had been on a long voyage. For someone who had always felt like an outsider in the world, this reception was deeply meaningful, as if she had finally found her place among those who accepted and celebrated her. She felt a sense of closure and gratitude for the experience, with no desire to return. Throughout her life, she practiced gratitude by listing 5 things for which she was thankful each day. Now, as she floated away, she expressed gratitude for the fulfillment of her prayer to either be healed or released from suffering, a prayer that had been answered in unexpected ways as she got both. She also described feeling like she had been granted early release for good behavior, expressing sincere gratitude from the depths of her soul. Despite the scarcity of time, she recalled facing a huge spiritual being early in her journey, taller than herself and positioned slightly behind her. Despite the absence of visible form, she turned her head to the left and inquired about the presence beside her. To her surprise, the response came immediately before she could even finish her question, accompanied by a profound sense of comprehension. She was told that she, herself, was the image and likeness, echoing the biblical verse from Genesis 25 and 26 that she had struggled to grasp throughout her life. We are made in the image and likeness of God. This revelation brought her a sense of clarity and understanding that had confused her previously, leaving her with a feeling of faith and acceptance. Recalling her past experiences, including her relationship with her father, she realized that while she had always believed in God's love, she now understood that she was not only loved but also genuinely liked by the divine presence she encountered. This recognition gave her a deep sense of endorsement and acceptance, contrasting with her father's conditional love and approval. She shared her belief in one of her books that love is something we have to earn from everyone, except for mothers, who love their children unconditionally. This belief led her to recognize God as similar to a mother's unconditional love, an idea that invited criticism, particularly when she referred to God using feminine pronouns. Despite the backlash, she defended her statement. The revelation that God not only loved but also genuinely liked her, just as she was, brought her immense comfort. Unlike the conditional love she had experienced from her father and others, she felt touched by a love that required no conditions. As she continued to drift away from her body, she felt liberated from the burdens and worries of materialistic life, including pending medical treatments and financial compulsions. In her newfound understanding, she embraced the brevity of life, considering it as a temporary journey rather than a final destination. She expressed a readiness to depart when the time came, free from attachment to the material world and its worries. The enormity of the revelations from her experience left her both astonished and amazed, expanding her perception of existence beyond anything she had previously imagined. Then she described the transition from the limitless world of floating to finding herself in an immaculate white room. The abrupt change puzzled her, and she often wondered about the details of the transition, but no answers came to mind. The room was luminous with a brilliant white light, without any visible light fixtures. There was a door in front of her, a familiar scenario she had seen in details of near-death experiences, NDEs. Despite uncertainties about her physical form, she was determined to reach the door. Sensing the presence of unseen beings accompanying her, she focused on moving towards the door, urging for a clear path. She believed that door would be her escape route from this world. As she approached, she observed that the mist around her started swirling and dancing. However, she was informed that her eyes had still not acclimated to the environment. Subsequently, she learned that the mist was actually light particles, serving as a cleansing mechanism similar to a spiritual car wash. She was also told about the purpose of that mist, which was to purify souls of earthly burdens and false identities before transitioning to the afterlife. It washed away the remnants of disease, societal judgments, and self-perceptions, freeing the soul from the chains of earthly existence. With determination, she reached out her right hand to push through the door, but it was firmly shut. However, before proceeding, she paused to seek guidance from the spiritual being accompanying her. She questioned whether it was God's will to end her life resulting from a medical mistake. The immediate response was a no. Instead, she was assured that whatever decision she made would be accompanied by divine mercy, blessings, grace, and love. As she tried to open the door again, traces of memories flooded her consciousness, particularly of a kind nurse who had comforted her in the emergency room. Rosemary declared it her anxiety that was probably a result of watching herself bleeding to death. Recalling the nurse's promise not to let her die and witnessing her subsequent despair when she failed, she felt an irresistible sense of compassion and connection. At that moment, she realized the extent of the pain and grief she would leave behind if she chose not to return. Recognizing the shared human feeling of suffering, she made the selfless choice to spare others from the pain she had faced since her husband's death. With a heavy heart, she lowered her right hand. Shortly after that, she found herself back in her physical body on the gurney, with no sensation of a reverse transition. She mentioned that she had understood the gravity of her situation, as it was not even possible for her to be given CPR due to bleeding. Despite being clinically dead for over 10 minutes due to severe blood loss, she had returned to life, defying medical expectations and providing a profound testament to the flexibility of the human spirit. According to medical comments, she should have faced serious health complications following her near-death experience. When the doctor told her that she had a heart attack, she denied it, citing her healthy lifestyle. However, blood tests revealed elevated enzymes suggestive of heart damage, recommending further tests. Despite Rosemary's insistence that more tests were unnecessary due to her heavenly healing, medical professionals proceeded cautiously. They were shocked when subsequent tests showed no evidence of heart damage whatsoever. This astonishing recovery confused her oncologist, who was not a believer in her claims of divine intervention. Despite disbelief from medical professionals, Rosemary persisted that she had been healed in heaven. Further medical examinations, including biopsies and surgeries, only supported the astonishing truth. There was no trace of cancer in her body. Even her flesh appeared healthy, lacking any previous signs of disease. The huge change in her emotional state was more significant than physical healing. The grief and guilt that had plagued her since her husband's passing vanished, replaced by forgiveness and self-acceptance. All of her 3 prayers about healing and release from suffering, having no life review, and facing hard decisions had been answered in ways that exceeded her wildest expectations. She would only remember the love and good things of her life. Following her incredible experience, Rosemary made significant life changes, relieving herself of worldly belongings and moving to the Midwest. There, she found comfort in witnessing the simple yet thoughtful process of plants growing, comparing it to her expedition of renewal. In her newfound life in the Midwest, she found satisfaction around the cornfields, having left most of her material possessions. She realized that good memories bring more happiness than material things. Despite her initial reluctance, discouraged by others, Rosemary wrote a book explaining her extraordinary journey. One of the most precious memories Rosemary recounted was the presence of angels by her bedside upon her return to consciousness in the hospital. Standing on three sides of her bed, they sang songs of praise, filling the room with spiritual melodies. Overwhelmed by the beauty of their songs, Rosemary found herself in tears, pleading with them not to stop. Desperate to remember the melodies and lyrics, she expressed her anxiety to the angels, but they assured her that the purpose of their music was not for memorization, but for her healing, peace, and joy. As she described their appearance, she explained them as towering human figures, 6.5 feet tall, draped in gowns of light that glowed with increasing brilliance as they sang. She shared that the more they glorified God and sang about love, the brighter they got, and they were so happy to be singing about light and love and beauty. Sharing her experience, she wondered whether such heavenly manifestations are more common around us than perceived, urging others to open their eyes to the spiritual wonders of earthly existence. She emphasized the presence of angels in our lives, wondering why they didn't always make their presence known. Recalling the moment when angels surrounded her bedside and sang to her after her near-death experience, she praised their acknowledgement of the hardships of human life. She shared an experience of an explosion of light she witnessed during a church service. As the pianist began playing the melody, she was awestruck by the eruption of colorful light springing from the piano, similar to sparks from a welding process. Despite her longing to witness such a spectacle again, Rosemary admitted that it remained a singular event in her life. However, the memory remained with her whenever she listened to music. She believed that music showered us with light and love. For those eager to connect with her and hear more about her experiences, Rosemary provided her website, temporarydeath.com, inviting direct emails.